Hi everybody, Woody here from Dive Talk. I've been waiting for this one. This could be the longest video. Here are Andy's examples of the real power of using gradient factor 99. Now you know I've called it like the speedometer of gradient factors. I don't know, kind of feels like that to me. Listen, I'm gonna go through examples. These are so cool, Andy. Okay. So gradient factor 99, reminder, it displays how, the gradient factor 99 display shows how effectively you are releasing nitrogen in real time. So instead of just ascending to a new level, right, to extend your NDL, you can use gradient factor 99 display to ensure that your new diving level maximizes the nitrogen removal. But I want to preface that by saying you still have to consider other factors. You don't want to maximize it where bubbles are coming out too quickly, and you also want to be mindful to where you are in the water column and whether or not you can maintain that spot in the water column. I said that in an earlier video. So if gradient factor 99 goes to a level which is about half of your gradient factor high, which Andy says is a really good optimal level for releasing your bubbles, such that your surface gradient factor will come down quicker. Make sure you can be at that spot. Surge in the ocean, holding on to a downline, not having good control over your buoyancy, always rule, okay? And there's no definite here. There's no definite here. This is just kind of theoretical still. So, gradient factor 99 empowers you to choose multi-level dive depths that will get you out of the water with far less nitrogen remaining in your body. If you use this effectively, if you use gradient factor 99 efficiently, effectively, properly, okay? Obviously, less nitrogen, less chance of DCS, just less risk. So, or less chance of that decompression stress. So let's look at these examples. Here is our first example. Andy's article. And example of off-gassing efficiency at different depths. Here we're at 22 feet. Notice that our gradient factor 99 is 1%. 1% indicates negligible nitrogen release, even if your dive time is extended. So you're not really reducing this surface gradient factor very effectively. Let's look at the next one. We move up to 16 feet. Surface gradient factor goes up to 26%. This shows you are getting rid of nitrogen, not just extending your dive time. So that's what we want, right? We're not just extending our dive time. We're maximizing the use of our dive time at these depths to get this surface gradient factor lower when we surface. We're being more effective with the depth that we're at. That's the power of gradient factor 99. I love this. Let's continue. Okay, so gradient factor 99 also informs you about off-gassing efficiency at your current depth. Here we go. Safety stops. Are we being efficient? In this example, you conduct a standard safety stop at 16 feet or 5 meters. After a shallower dive, you only have reached gradient factor 99, 8%. Not very efficient at that depth. It is a low number and indicates poor nitrogen release speed. 8%. You're not really off-gassing that quickly. You're at a safety stop, but it's not really doing much for you. Let's get it more efficient. The power of gradient factor 99. Here we go. After 3 minutes on the safety stop, look at this. Your gradient factor is only dropped by 2%. You stayed at that depth. You were there for 2 minutes at that safety stop, and you only dropped your surface gradient factor by 2%. That's not adding much value, right? That's not good. So on shallower dives, it is It isn't uncommon to have a single-digit gradient factor. For that reason, an arbitrary safety stop at 5 meters or 16 feet can be a complete waste of your time. Now, I don't agree. I would not say a complete waste of your time, but not an efficient use of your time. I'd rather say that. So I kind of differ a little bit there. And it's also good training to go and hover there on a safety stop. Just for that reason alone, just chilling, relaxing, and then get you in a mindset to take that remaining ascent from the safety stop all the way up to the surface really, really slow, extra slow, 10 feet a minute even, that's slow, okay? But you're not really removing a lot of nitrogen. You're barely reducing it. But you can use gradient factor 99 display to ascend to a depth that guarantees more efficient nitrogen removal. Rule of thumbs, I know some of you don't like them, but I like them. You should aim for anywhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of your preset gradient factor high for your gradient factor 99. For instance, if your gradient factor high is set at 85%, I'm not saying to set it there, I'm saying if it's set there, then aim to conduct your safety stop at a depth that creates a gradient factor between 28% and 42%. So let's look what happens on this example. Now you go up to, this is 3 meters, so about, let's call it 10 feet. You've ascended to a depth of 10 feet to conduct your safety stop. Shallower depth allows a higher gradient factor 99, so the gradient factor speedometer has gone up. The rate that you're releasing the nitrogen has gone up, okay? So let's see what happens now. Let's see what happens to that surface gradient factor now. Look at this. Because your nitrogen is leaving your body at a faster speed, the same 3-minute safety stop reduces your gradient factor to 65% after 2 minutes. Remember before it only dropped at 2%? Now it dropped at 10% because you're being more efficient. You have a better gradient factor speedometer. So that can pay huge dividends to the benefit of your safety stop. There is no ideal safety stop depth because it depends on specific dive parameters. Using gradient factor 99 in your Shearwater Dive Computer Settings gives you information you need to set that depth. That's beautiful. Look at gradient factor 99. Better way to figure out where you want to be in the water column to lower that surface gradient factor before you reach the surface. Let's add even more conservatism to your dive. So, it says while you set your predefined conservatism prior to a dive, there may be situations that arise on dives where you feel it's prudent to add even a little bit more safety. Like he goes on to say, you get cold on the dive. That would be a reason to add more safety, more decompression. The dive demands more physical effort than expected. You exceed the safe maximum ascent rate. The surface gradient factor lets you do that in an informed way. It's a far better than merely hanging around for an unspecified amount of time and hoping it might help. Like 3 minutes, is that really doing anything? If you had one of these things happen, gradient factor 99 can help you know if it's helping. So let's look at his example of surface gradient factor 99 to extend a safety stop because you are cold or you ascended too quickly. So let's say you reach your safety stop after 40 minutes of diving. The surface gradient factor indicates 85%. You are at the limit of the default conservatism. So that's a default setting that Shearwater may have. We don't want to be more than 85%. Don't do that. But look at your gradient factor 99, 35%. As Andy just said, that's a pretty good speed. Gradient factor speedometer, baby, in action. After 3 minutes on the safety stop, your surface gradient factor has reduced to 79%. You've effectively added 6% insulation against DCS risk. And I'm sorry, my printer ran out of ink. But I'm telling you, in that case, you reduced this 85% to 79% after the 3-minute safety stop. If you want to add further conservatism, he goes on to say, you can remain on the safety stop until the surface gradient factor reaches whatever desired level you have. Like, for example, I told you I dive a 40-70. I'm not saying to do that. I'm telling you that's what I do. Now, in this case, a further 3 minutes would bring the surface gradient factor down to 70%. So from 85% to 70%. That's a nice, safe 30% insulation against DCS risk. Not a guarantee, not a guarantee. It's an insulation. It's another buffer. So get the most out of your Shearwater Dive Computer settings. If you're Shearwater Dive Computer owner, if you are an owner, it is really time to start exploring these settings and understanding them. This article has been amazing. Those of you who have contributed have been amazing. Gradient factor 99 and surface gradient factor, if used properly, can really be beneficial. Know if you're absorbing or releasing nitrogen. Understand your off-gassing efficiency. Avoid causing decompression stress. Have flexible, real-time control over your conservatism. Optimize the length and depth of your safety stops. Optimize that. It's not, I'm going to 20 feet or 15 feet and stopping for 3 minutes. Is that really helping? Gradient factor 99 can let you know if it's really helping, efficiently. Be mindful of other factors, though. Your dive experience. Don't use these settings if you don't understand them. Seek the help of a dive professional that understands this stuff. Don't go changing these settings on your own without knowing this. Really, really be careful with that. But they can be so effective. Okay, monitor how quickly your nitrogen level drops. How cool is that? Conduct ideal multi-level dives. That means moving to a different place in the water column based upon the gradient factor 99, the speedometer of gradient factors, helping you be more effective and efficient at removing the nitrogen so your surface gradient factor ends up at the level that you want it at. There are more resources. There are more books out there. There is so much more information on this. This was meant to be high level. I'll end by saying, I am a big believer in being positive about diving, welcoming everybody into diving, welcoming everybody to learn more. Learning more doesn't mean you automatically are ready to use this information. It doesn't mean you should go tinkering with these settings without understanding them. But let's share our knowledge, dive instructors. Let's be out there and promote diving, welcome new divers into understanding this. The fact that Shearwater gives us these powerful tools is amazing. We're getting more and more tools that are allowing us to dive longer, deeper, with more knowledge. That can be very beneficial, and it can also be dangerous, right? Because these things are allowing us to stay down longer and even deeper. So I encourage you, I will end with, seek out the advice of a dive professional. But dive professionals, welcome your students. And you know what? It's okay to say, I don't know. Dive professionals, it's okay to say, I don't know. Who cares? Stop with the ego. There's no elite dive instructors. Some dive instructors know more about certain things than others. Hopefully this just raises everybody's bar. It definitely helped me. It really, really clarified for me a lot more about gradient factors. And this is why. Andy Davis, Shearwater Dive Computer Settings, become a power user. I have links in the first video to this. Thank you. Thank you so much for publishing this. Thank you for all who have contributed, and more great videos coming in the future. Bye, everybody. Dive safe and conservative, and have fun always.